In the heart of the Renaissance, when the world was emerging from the shadows of the Dark Ages, a storm was brewing that would shake the very foundations of Europe. Imagine a time when the church was not just a place of worship, but a powerful empire that controlled almost every aspect of life. People feared the church more than they feared their kings, and for good reason. The church held the keys to salvation and could send you straight to hell with a single word. This was the world that Michelangelo, Erasmus, and many others lived in, and it was a world on the brink of change. Michelangelo, the famous artist, had a choice. He could either create art that glorified the church or defy it and face severe consequences. But he was not alone in his struggle. There were many others, like Martin Luther, who could not ignore their conscience, even if it meant going against the church. For them, the church's claim of perfection, and the idea that change was heretical, was unbearable. These learned men, the few who could read and write, felt it was their duty to demand reform. They believed the church needed to change, and they were willing to risk everything for it. At first, their goal was simple. They wanted to improve the church from within. They hoped that by pointing out its flaws, the church would listen and make the necessary changes. But as time went on, they realized that the church was too rooted in its ways to change. The more they spoke out, the more the church fought back. This revolution, like Saturn devouring its own children, turned on those who had started it. One of the most famous examples of this is the story of Copernicus. Copernicus was a brilliant scientist who proposed that the Earth revolved around the sun, not the other way around. This idea went against everything the church taught. The church had long believed that the Earth was the center of the universe, and to suggest otherwise was considered heresy. Despite the dangers, Copernicus published his findings, and within a century, another scientist named Galileo Galilei would confirm his theory. Galileo's story is both tragic and inspiring. He was a man of great intelligence and courage, but he also paid a heavy price for his beliefs. When he published his findings, the church summoned him to Rome and accused him of heresy. Under threat of torture, Galileo was forced to recant his belief in the heliocentric model. As he left the tribunal, he is said to have muttered, "And yet it does move," a statement that has become a symbol of the struggle between science and religion. The church's resistance to change was not just about maintaining power. It was also about preserving a way of life that had held Europe together during the Dark Ages. Back then, the church was the only institution that could offer hope and stability. Kings and princes, even the most ruthless, feared the church's power and often submitted to its authority. The church's sacraments promised eternal salvation, and this was a powerful incentive for people to follow its teachings. But as the Renaissance brought new ideas and discoveries, the church's authority began to wane. Scholars and thinkers like Erasmus, a devout Catholic, began to question the church's practices. Erasmus, the son of a priest, was a gentle and thoughtful man who believed in the importance of piety. He was deeply troubled by the church's corruption and the abuse of power by its leaders. However, unlike others who were more aggressive in their criticism, Erasmus chose to express his doubts more subtly. He believed that sometimes it was better to conceal the truth to avoid offending others and causing unnecessary conflict. Erasmus's approach was in stark contrast to men like Pico della Mirandola and Johannes Reuchlin, who were more outspoken in their criticism. Pico della Mirandola, a brilliant philosopher, dared to suggest that there were connections between Christian theology and Jewish mysticism. This was a dangerous idea in a time when the church was deeply suspicious of anything that challenged its teachings. Pico's boldness led to his arrest and imprisonment, and he eventually met a tragic end. Johannes Reuchlin, another scholar, faced similar challenges. He was a master of Hebrew and taught it to his students, which was considered a controversial and even heretical act. The church's reaction to Reuchlin's work was harsh, and he was forced to defend himself against accusations of heresy. His case became a symbol of the growing tension between the church and the humanist scholars who sought to challenge its authority. The stories of these men highlight the complex and often dangerous nature of the religious and intellectual landscape of the time. They were caught between their faith and their reason, between their loyalty to the church and their commitment to truth. The church, which had once been a source of hope and stability, was now a barrier to progress and change. In the end, the church's resistance to change led to a schism that would reshape the religious and political landscape of Europe. The Protestant Reformation, led by Martin Luther and others, challenged the Church's authority and paved the way for a new era of religious and intellectual freedom. The Church, which had once been a unifying force, was now divided, and the world would never be the same. The struggle between faith and reason, between tradition and progress, is a theme that continues to resonate today. The stories of Michelangelo, Erasmus, Pico, and Reuchlin remind us that change is often difficult and comes at a great cost. But they also show us that the human spirit is resilient, and that the pursuit of truth and justice is a noble and necessary endeavor. In a world that is still grappling with the same questions, their legacy serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of standing up for what is right, even when the odds are against you.